Thank you very much for coming and supporting this movie. As you know, this movie, I guess she said, tell us more about maybe the behind the scenes of how this was. First, this was commissioned by the BBC, and then it ended up being banned, or they distanced themselves from it. So, can you please just tell us, take us behind this, what exactly happened?
It was actually we first started talking about it with Tanya, yes, Pacheco, who's actually, as a student, lived with Bill Mavro, who was at Channel 4, and they came up with the idea that there was targeting of doctors and hospitals. Came up with the idea that the Israelis did. And we worked on a small development with Channel 4 for about a month. But at the time, we were producing another film called Kill Zone. And so they said, look, see if you can take it in your mouth. BBC Panorama took it. They gave us 10 weeks of development, that's small amount of money, so we could develop it and research. And then BBC said we had to talk to our bosses. The BBC Panorama is the main current affairs program in this country. It's watched by 3 or 4 million people. And they said, it's very, very strong. We really want to do it. We need to talk to the bosses. And then the next day, they called us up and said, we aren't going to do it anymore. Instead, we're going to do 3 programs about the UK election, which is about Brexit. We were like, oh, that's...
And what stage of the movie was there? Is that before, year after that? Where exactly did they?
So at this stage, we'd hired some people on the ground to film stuff.
We'd done the research.
It was in the middle of production. It hadn't been nowhere near editing. So then we went to BBC Worldwide, which is a part of the BBC, it's a TV part of BBC World Service. A very good section called BBC I, which is an investigative strand. And they were very keen on it, and we started working with them. And that was about May, June. We were filming in Gaza, and we went to Egypt and to Israel to meet the whistleblowers and to meet the doctors who led them out of Gaza in September, October. And we had a date with December that was too early for us. So anyway, we got to January when it was meant to be broadcast, and they said, no, hold on. We need to pause, someone's going on holiday, and then they put out another film which included a 14-year-old kid who was narrating it, whose father was in Hamas, but he was head of fruit and veg in Hamas. He wasn't for Hamas. He was a very sort of functionary bureaucrat, but because that was omitted from the film, the BBC then totally freaked out and said they pulled that film. And then they said to us, we need to delay about 2 weeks. And I said, you're delaying because of the other film. And they said, no. And they rolled it over for 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, we'd get to a week within broadcasting it. But we was ready to go. They'd seen it. They'd approved it. Been to the lawyers. And in fact, the Israelis, we sent a right to reply to them, and they didn't contest any of the facts in it. They just said Hamas were in this hospital, Hamas were in that hospital. There was no evidence of that. So that's why it's not in the film. So they rolled it over for 10 weeks. During the whole period, we said, you're delaying it because of the other film and the investigation. They said, but then after 10 weeks, they got us in a room and they said, okay, we told you we weren't delayed because of the other film. We were delayed because of the other film, but we didn't know we were doing that and we didn't lie to you. And at that point, I knew that it wasn't our own film at all. So we then went into sort of very... heated negotiations with them, and then they tried to get me to sign a gagging clause, which I didn't sign, and they were repeatedly trying to get me to sign a gagging clause. And then I went to a film festival, sat for a panel on this, told the whole story, and then by the time the panel finished, the BBC said you can have the film out.
Victoria, you were one of the doctors on the ground, and what's your specialty?
I'm a plastic surgeon.
Your pleasures. How many times did you go to Gaza? Once, more than once?
Before the war, I used to go. I've been going since 2018. But since October the 7th, we'd been in March, August for a month, and then we got back in June. In June.
So after the war, you went twice?
3 times.
Three times. And I know there's like very, very graphic and very horrific details in this movie, but um, what is there like a particular story that stuck with you when you were there? I mean, because like I can't imagine like you working and operating under fire. You have been like I can imagine that you had to work with bullets flying over you, um, drones and helicopters and tanks surrounding you. And it is just, the working as a doctor is stressful enough, and to have to do this under these like very extreme conditions, it must be like something from absolute hell.
Well, there's loads. I mean, just in the film alone, I knew Adland really well because he was in the UK with me. He was one of the doctors that we started out in NECOM project with. So we went over in 2013, and he came back to Lobby at King's for 6 months. So that's quite. I can't watch this film now. It's very tough for me. And Abaid, I worked with Abaid many times in Gaza, and to know that he's been disappeared now is really, really difficult. Maghrabi, who's not got such a big part in the film, he's a plastic surgeon as well, and he came to see me at the European Gaza Hospital when I was there in March, and he told me that exact story. And he was afraid, because I wanted to door him, I didn't. He was afraid to tell me the story because he was convinced that he was going to be disappeared as well. But I mean, the situation it's beyond ridiculous now. When we were there in May, it was, I mean, we were being bombed all the time. It used to start at 4 a.m, and it didn't really stop. We were shot out on the balcony of NASA. Initially, when we went there, it was a bit like Scrap Heap Challenge. We had so little equipment, and it was almost amusing the way in which we would try and repurpose things and make do and then to get through the cases. But in May, it was just intolerable. We ran out of items that you just couldn't go on without. I mean, we were re-sterilising scalpel blades to use them, and they're once only use items. We were all wearing the same pair of gloves because they only had size 8 by that stage, which was hard. We were using our gowns as drapes. We had run out of all but 3 antibiotics, but I think the thing that sticks with me the most is that we'd run out of analgesia, so we'd run out of painkillers. And every day that I was there in the May and the June, we run an operating list in the plastics theatre of 10 to 12 patients, and the first 6 would be children, and you'd start with the youngest, and then you'd work up in age order. So the first 6 would be under the age of 15. The youngest we operated on was 3 months old. That child had been bombed and burnt in his own home, and both his parents had been killed. And we would start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and from about 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, all you could hear in the recovery was children crying because we had no painkiller for them. And that's really difficult. I know I've worked there many times, but some of the people that were with us that had never worked there before were really struggling with just listening to small children crying.
Were you working with like how many people would actually came with you from the UK? Was it a convoy with like a group of doctors?
This time we went in, there were 5 of us that went in. We'd been denied entry in the August. 4 of us tried to get in, in February, 4 of us tried to get in for the charity, and we were all denied entry. And that was really difficult because COGAT, which are the coordination of the government activities in the occupied Palestinian territories, they're a branch of the IOF really, and they have been clamping down more and more on people that are given access to Gaza, and what they've been specifically clamping down on is surgeons, because they know that surgeons are the most important people at the moment to deal with the war wounds, and they specifically were looking at charities that had surgeons. So they denied us all entry in February, and the WHO think now that they're denying 50% of all surgeons that apply entry to Gaza, which is, it's hard. But in the June-May, 5 of us got in, and the way we got in was to split the team. So we sent 2 surgeons in first, or we sent a surgeon and an anaesthetist in first, and then 3 surgeons went in a week later. And the two that we sent in first were bombed at the European Gaza within 2 days of arriving.
Dr. Omar, you've been a huge part of organizing the main event of Voices for Solidarity for Gaza, but also you've been working with a lot of doctors. I want to ask you specifically about this, not just like the random targeting, which is absolutely not random, but like the specific targeting of leadership in different hospitals and healthcare, like the whether they're just like top doctors, top surgeons, as Victoria said, or even the managers and presidents of hospital. And of course, the whole idea is like it's a Hamas-run health ministry, and it's very easy to just like brand Hamas with everything, and then that gives them the permission. So can you give us like a more of an insight about the targeting of the leadership of medical staff?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say, Rosie, when she first told me that she was denied entry, I said, you're probably Palestinian, maybe you're Victoria Abu Rose.
Hi, Abu
Warda. Because that's true. And sorry, just on that point, you know, they've been denying Palestinians and doctors of Arab descent, but also Victoria and James Smith, my good friend, also hasn't been able to get in. On that point, Bassem, yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we started Health Workers for Palestine as a solidarity movement in November 23. At that time, there were 90 doctors and health workers that had been killed since October 23. We're now at 1,500, more than 1,500, 2 years later. And I'll come to the point of leadership, but if you, and I find it so pisses me off, I'm sorry to have to compare to the UK, but I sometimes just feel that's the only way that people empathize because it seems so far away. If you put that in the context of the NHS, that's about 40,000 health workers that have been killed or disappeared. So imagine a healthcare system that's lost that many doctors, surgeons, nurses, paramedics. How would that function? So it is a miracle that they are on these, you know, these surgeons. They are absolutely incredible. The targeting health workers, absolutely. The leadership, the top brass, and Victoria, Rosie will mention that as well, I'm sure. But you know, we've lost, I think in the last 70 days, we've lost 50 healthcare workers. Many of them are hospital directors of the hospitals in northern Gaza, Indonesian hospital, Kamal Adwan. There was a picture that I saw on Instagram a few weeks back where it was 4 of these leaders, Dr. Omar Farwana, Dr. Marwan Sofana, you know, Adnan al-Bush, all together in one photo. They've all been eliminated. And you saw there, these are not random attacks, these are targeted attacks where they know exactly where these people live. And then they, you know, hit them with a drone or they hit them with a missile strike, and the family will be there. They'll almost wait for them to get home, and then they take out the whole family because everyone else is collateral damage in their eyes. So any healthcare system has lost that many leaders, and these are real leaders. Gazan doctors, I've worked with them, I've trained the medical students, and frankly, these are, you know, incredible doctors. Any system that's under that much pressure could not cope, and it is testament to their tenacity, their sumud, their resistance, their ability to fight back and stand up, that, you know, it is still somehow functioning, but it really isn't the reality. You know, that's the actual reality. I think, Rosie, you were saying there's no plastic surgeons left in Gaza now.
No, there's none at all now. That was a very small number before the war started because they can't run a training program in plastic surgery. It's quite a small specialty, and it relies on you being able to get your trainees out of Gaza to train within the rest of the world. And when I look at my trainees in London, they all spend a period of time outside the UK. They go to America, they'll go to Taiwan, they go to Europe. But even just to go to international meetings, we send them everywhere so that they learn the specialty from everyone. In Gaza, you're requiring a permit from Israel to leave Gaza to go to an international meeting, and 97% were being denied to surgeons. So our project with Ideals set up because we knew we couldn't expect them to come and train with us for much longer. So we decided to go in and train there, and that was, you know, a consequence of the situation that Israel were in.
It's been you working in the humanitarian and NGOs field. I want to ask you specifically about the the other, I mean, of course, I'm ask you the question. You please free to expand. Some notorious NGOs like GHF, which is the quote unquote humanitarian American-led mercenaries that are actually like supposedly sending aid and killing people that they're getting it. Can you please tell us more about this and how the international community has been reacting to this specific part?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that it's an honour to be on the panel with all of you who have done such incredible work on Gaza. And obviously just how heroic the efforts are of the Palestinian doctors, those that continue to remain to work, and also those that remain in detention and those who have died. First of all, before I get into the humanitarian provision, as you said, by mercenaries, Human Rights Watch has documented, and has this been seen in this film, the systematic and deliberate attack on healthcare system, healthcare workers, and healthcare provision in Gaza. It is systematic, it is intentional. We have seen the destruction of nearly the entire medical facility in Gaza. As has been noted, hundreds of doctors have been killed, hundreds of doctors have been detained. We have documented the torture and mistreatment that those doctors have faced both in Gaza and, as has been noted, when they're transferred to Israel as well. All of those that we have documented have been enforced disappearances. There have been no charges laid. There have been nothing. There has been absolutely no justice whatsoever. We have documented also the mistreatment, and this is systematic mistreatment of patients in hospitals as well, depriving those patients of the most fundamental necessities: food, water, medicines. In terms of what is happening now, I think it is really important to note that we got a message today, HRW, that the Ministry of Health in Gaza has condemned the abduction of Dr. Marwan al-Hams, the director of Bassem Youssef al-Najjar Hospital. That came out today. He is the official responsible for field hospitals and the spokesperson for the ministry. And that came out today. So what we are talking about is every day, today as we are sitting now, the abduction of the most significant healthcare workers in Gaza. But what we are also seeing, as you note, is not only what has been the blocking of absolute essential humanitarian aid, which the ICJ has said amounts to a plausible risk of those rights under the Genocide Conventions, which have been repeatedly denied and flouted by Israel. But now, as you note, these are being set up by private companies that are in liaison with the US and Israel. And what we have seen is the deliberate attack of people who are trying to get aid, and also the forcible expulsion of people and displacement of Palestinians in Gaza to areas that amount to concentration camps, essentially. So what we have now is a situation where I have so many text messages on my phone, signal messages from doctors and others, talking about the hundreds of children that they are treating who are severely malnourished, those that have died as a result of this, and those that are trying to seek a minimal amount of nutrition are facing death as a result of that. So the situation could not be more severe, and the lack of international action is abhorrent at best. I mean, it's criminal.
Again, like whenever I ask a question, please free to expand, because whatever I ask will always be limited to my knowledge. So I'm sure that you have much more to add. So please don't limit yourself to the scope of whatever I'm asking. Ben, I have a production question for you, which is I was watching and I was wondering when I was watching this, you have very, very incriminating evidence of what happened in Gaza, and you had a crew on the ground filming that, all I could think about, how could you get the hard disks outside of Gaza? Because of course, under the security, that's a very, very the security. Like, have they been checking your hard disk? Have been checking the cameras? Because this is basically like a testimony. How could you manage to get this material? I mean, there are people who live in the Arab world with far less security hell than Israel, and people are worried when they have a certain hard disk or material going in. How did you manage to get these material out? And again, it's a production question. Please feel free to expand about an area that you're interested to talk about after this.
Just in just I want to say in the abduction of that doctor, he was being interviewed by, I think, 3 journalists, 2 of whom were killed, and 1 of whom ended up with 4 balloon lids. There's no competition between doctors and media workers. The media workers have also been targeted, and they took this guy, and they killed the journalist who was saying the see opposite, and so just about that. So it all comes out is that you can't get anything in or out.
Oh, so you uploaded from there. Wow, you uploaded all this, but again, like, there's no internet. Like, how did you do that? Like, what did you do?
I mean, the guys you're working with are ingenious. They're incredible. And there was one guy who's working in the north, and the north was pretty much isolated because the Israelis had wanted to push everyone south. And one of the things we tried to add in the film was how it was targeted and strategic, because they hit most of us was, I mean, they went for El Shifa first because they said there was this huge military sort of Star Wars complex underneath, which just didn't exist in the first one we made. We sort of hold that. Even the Americans came out after they went and found the brew code and a couple of old, Atari game systems or whatever they found. And so, but they kind of worked from the north down, pushing the civilian population, because it seems likely that the plan all along was to get everyone down to to the border. So the north, it was if you get a thing out of the north, Gaza, it's absolutely heroic, and some of the people are taking enormous risks to get into that signals they probably shouldn't have, or the Israelis think they shouldn't have. There were some cables there was still the hardware in the infrastructure. About 5 weeks ago, they hit the main cable, but somehow they've managed to resurrect a lot of the internet coverage. But honestly, it's sending stuff at night when it's quieter. These guys work 24 hours a day to get the stuff out.
I mean, I can't even imagine how could you upload that, and then you have to erase the discs, and it's starting. And yeah,
I mean, what one Jabba, who I said earlier had to leave Darryl Baba today, he won a BAFTA. Is he still there? He's still there, yeah. He had to leave Darryl Baba today with evacuate his family. He won a BAFTA, and we tried to get the BAFTA in by someone, and they stopped the guy who was going in on a humanitarian mission, but he had the award for the guy when the Israelis saw it and stopped his whole mission. Which is extraordinary.
Victoria, where are you based or stationed? What hospital are you working in the UK, or are you like locum? What's
I work in London. I'm owned by guys and services, but I'm sort of roamed out to a few different courses here.
And when you come back from this and you talk to your colleagues and the other doctors in the hospital, I mean, how do they react to this? Like, you've seen stuff that all of these people have never seen in all their medical career, and how do they respond? Your colleagues, your doctors around you here in London?
All very positively, actually. I haven't had a negative word said, even from my Jewish colleagues. I haven't had a negative word said to you about what we.
No, I'm also having the negative side that the doctors, yeah, but I'm sure there's a sort of solidarity. I mean, how they're feeling that their colleagues somewhere else and seeing you going there, like, what is that emotional burden on them as they are?
I think there's a huge amount of support for what's going on for the surgeons of Gaza, particularly. I mean, everyone I speak to at work supports them. As I said, there isn't a single person that doesn't think that we shouldn't be going, that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. I think it is very difficult for people to volunteer, and COGAT have really made it harder. When we first started going at the beginning of the war, we were able to travel through Cairo, through the Sinai Desert, and enter through Rafah, and the duration of the mission was 2 weeks. You could take anything you wanted with you. It was a much easier trip to make, and as the war has progressed, we've had more and more restrictions on us, and one of the things that has stopped a lot of people going is that the minimum deployment now is a month, and for a lot of surgeons in the NHS, your annual leave is 6 weeks. So if you're now going to spend 4 of those in Gaza, you're really going to piss your family off. So it's, not only are you going into a war zone, so they're not particularly happy, but now you've eaten into, the Christmas and summer holidays. And so we lost, in our charity, we lost 90% of our volunteers overnight when they brought that restriction in. And then they made it even harder that if you go in for a month, you can only take one bag with you that has to weigh 23 kilos. I mean, it's worse than trying to fly with EasyJet. You can't take anything.
Oh, even worse than Ryanair.
But you have to take all your food for a month. You have to take water for 3 days. You're not allowed to take any medical equipment. I mean, it's just getting ridiculous to try and get in. And then plus the fact that you take all this leave, which is what happened to us in February. We all booked 4 weeks leave. We got out to Oman, and then we were denied entry. And I've used all my leave now, and I come back to the UK, and I'm like, hey, can I come back to work? Can we cancel my annual leave? And some trusts will do that, but not everyone. They've cancelled my operator on my clinics. It's very difficult to volunteer in Gaza.
Dr. Omar, can you tell us more about the recent collaboration between Palantir and the NHS, and how could this actually affect what does that mean for the UK patients recruits and the access of data, and what does that mean, especially that Palantir is also involved in creating the AI solutions for killing namely lavender. So can you talk to us more about this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm no expert on this topic, but I would say that there's been an amazing group of health workers who have been working on this, lobbying, pressurizing NHS Trust, the government. So essentially, as you said, there's a contract between Palantir and the NHS, I think worth over £300 million, which essentially provides patient records and data. So a company that is actively complicit in this genocide. This is a company, as you said, that their chief executive officer, when he was asked sort of about what's happening in Gaza, just mumbled his way and was just unable to. Just a great impersonation. So this is. And this is not just Palantir. I mean, Palantir is one example, and it's discussed, like, for me to be working in the NHS, and to know that potentially, there is a company involved very closely with our healthcare system that is actively involved in the killing of Palestinian women, men, and children. That is abhorrent. But we've seen this throughout Francesca Albanese's recent report, where she's named all the complicit companies. Palantir is obviously one of the top ones. So I think it's not just in the healthcare sphere, it's within all of our different institutions. I don't know how many medics are here in the room. I assume there's people from all walks of life, but in every institution that you are working in, I don't know about the ICA, I hope not, but there are links directly to these Israeli tech companies and firms, whether it's in commerce or in finance, and our money is actively, Facebook is actively funding a genocide. So why the hell is our government continuing to provide support for this. And we were talking earlier about, moving away from Palantir, just go to the UK government. I'm sure Yasmin will touch on that. The fact that they are sending 15% of every F-35 jets path going to Israel that is bombing hospitals. So my tax money is going to bomb Palestinian medics and health workers. It's a complete mindfuck. Sorry for the language, but it really is. That is literally the truth. And I think this film, Ben, I've said this before, and I honestly think this film should be shown to every chief executive, every hospital director, every hospital leader in this country. It should be mandatory training for NHS workers, because to be a healthy worker in this atmosphere, and I'm glad Rosie said, her colleagues are supportive, and I've had amazing support in hospital from nurses, from doctors who quietly will come and say to me, amazing work, you guys are doing, and thank you for speaking up. But it's hidden, it's brushed under the carpet. At least that's my experience. When it comes to hospital leadership, when it comes to censorship, the whole reason Health Workers Palestine was started was because the Royal College of Physicians stopped us from holding a fundraiser at their site premises on security grounds. So we went and stood outside 10 Downing Street and said, gave them the middle finger and said, well, we're going to do it anyway. We're going to hold a vigil and a protest. So, I guess what I'm saying is that the censorship is rife. It's there. The spike in General Medical Council referrals, which is our regulatory body, in terms of doctors being referred, literally hundreds of doctors have gone to fitness to practice tribunals or have at least been investigated simply for posting anti-genocidal comments. Because, standing against genocide is not cool, right? In their eyes. The kind of shadow of anti-Semitism is thrown at you as soon as you start speaking up. Again, Yasmin, I don't want to take up from your time, but I'm sure you'll talk about UK Lawyers for Israel and their involvement in that.
My next question. UK Lawyers for Israel has been a kind of bunch of trolls, basically, annoying assholes. So sorry for my. So those motherfuckers. They have been harassing people. They have been doing what they do. It's the same accounts on X. How they can, they flood your timeline and harass you. They do that in real time. And can you tell us more about how the systematic harassment that have been doing, the intimidation techniques that have been using, and how people reacted towards this?
Yeah, I think, thank you for the question. From Human Rights Watch's perspective, I've been focusing a lot more on the failure of the UK government, but obviously there has also been a concerted action by a group of individuals, and it's not only been limited to these hostilities in Gaza. The recent hostilities, it's been ongoing, and there has been a fear of healthcare workers, of politicians and others to be able to speak up about the crimes and atrocities that Israel has and continues to commit because of the conflation of the acts of Israel and anti-Semitism. And that has been used and in fact, some of the victims of that are those that are in fact subject to anti-Semitism, because that conflation undermines their very real experience. But what we see, that conflation has been actively weaponized in all spheres in the UK and globally to shut down any criticism of Israel. In the medical sphere and in political sphere, I know that's what we at Human Rights Watch have seen and have said consistently is, in addition to that, this UK government has responsibilities. And
what do you think the UK government should do to stop that genocide? What do you think?
Well, the first thing is that they have to end their risk of complicity in that genocide. And that risk of complicity is the fact that they continue to provide F-35 components that are used by Israel in Gaza. Reports, for example, that in 2024, an F-35 was used on Al-Mawasi, a safe zone, killing 90 people. And we know that F-35s continue to be used. And this government has acknowledged themselves that F-35 are used in Israel and that their components exist in those F-35s and are manufactured here and that they are licensing them that go into a supply pool. They have acknowledged as well that there is a clear risk that those very components will be used to carry out or facilitate serious violation of international law. They conceded that in Parliament and in court, and yet they continue to provide F-35 licenses for F-35 components in the face of a very clear duty to prevent genocide. And that arises when there is a serious risk. The ICJ has said it. International human rights organisations like Amnesty and Human Rights Watch have said it. The UN has said it. And yet governments continually fail to act on their obligations and to end their own risk of complicity. But in addition to that, there are many other things that this UK government and other governments can be doing. Immediately suspending the free trade agreement with Israel. Immediately. Why should Israel have privileges, economic privileges in this current context? That's a key tool that you have. And all this UK government did was suspend future talks that were halted in any event and said they're going to review the 2030 roadmap. But they have not said when they're going to review that, how they're going to review that. And speaking of what you were talking about, procurement and relationships in the medical field, but more broadly, that 2030 roadmap talks about military, technological and other cooperation with Israel. Why? How many? Now that's been probably 2 months ago that they announced that. What have we heard about? They're reviewing their entire relationship with Israel in light of their potential complicity and their other obligations. And all we hear from this UK government is that we will potentially take further action. When? What is your red line? I say that when I speak.
It seems to be like the same thing, like BBC, maybe 2 weeks. Maybe 2 weeks, same thing. As you said, it's like review means nothing.
What is there? And if that's not, if we saw tonight is not a red line, then what is a red line?
We know that all of these politicians are paid by Israel, and then as you say, it's just like basic prostitution economics. Like a prostitute would not badmouth their film. So all of these people are being filmed by those girls they paid, and a politician will not bite the hand that feeds his campaign or finger his ass. So let's have. I'm sorry, let's have like a couple of questions from the audience, because I'm sure that you have so many questions. So let's have some rules. It's a question. It ends with a question mark. Please don't go on end. Be very specific. Ask the question very clearly. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Hey, how are you doing?
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Dr. Mohammed Youssef. I also was in Gaza as well. I just want to acknowledge a couple of things first. I want to say, first of all, Dr. Rosie, I'm from Gaza. I'm Palestinian, but I'm British. And I used to grow up and I used to watch you back in the days when we used to go to Gaza when I was a young junior doctor. So I just want to say that I appreciate what you do, and I appreciate all the other senior British surgeons that do go. And I think it's very important that we acknowledge that. You're not a Palestinian, you're not Arab, you're not Muslim, you still choose to put yourself in danger to help us. So I really want to acknowledge that from the heart. Thank you so much for everyone. Look, there's a couple of things actually. Obviously, Dr. Rosie has been out campaigning, and I've been campaigning as well to try and make a change. I think the frustration thing is there's a lot of closed door solidarity. Just an hour ago or a few hours ago, there was a statement released by 32 countries demanding an immediate ceasefire to Gaza. 1 hour after that statement was released, the RAF boarded another plane that flew over to do spy reconnaissance missions. This is a huge problem, and it's a problem that I've had while I've been talking to governments as well. I just want to get Dr. Rosie's and Dr. Omar's opinion on this, but we get told one thing and the actions are another thing. How do we overcome this where behind closed doors we're being told one thing, but the actual reality of what's happening doesn't seem to change?
Well, I think it's really difficult because I think we're living in an age now where everyone wants an instant fix to this situation. You're used to sort of, receiving packages the next day on Amazon, and you're watching this on Instagram and you can't understand why it's over. But this has been going on for a very long time. And I can't tell you the change that I've seen since we first started going. When I used to come back from Gaza, lots of people that I mixed with didn't even know where that was. And now everyone knows where it is, and everyone knows what happened in 1948, and everyone knows what's happening now. So we have made a huge amount of headway. And I know it feels like it's moving very slowly, but it is moving in the right direction. And I think we cannot wane and give up just because it's not moving as fast as we want. I grew up in the 70s when apartheid was still going, and that didn't end in 2 years. So we have to keep moving. It feels like we are running out of time, but even the statement is a massive headway from where we were when this war started. I think you have to keep going, we have to keep pushing. If we could get the UK government to fall out with Europe, with Canada, with Australia, the only people that are funding this are going to be America. Trump is a businessman. He's not going to keep this going if he's the only one in it. You've just got to keep the faith. We're making headway.
So just to add to that, absolutely echo what Rosie just said. We can't give up. We can't be allowed to be fear-mongered into corners by entities, cancerous entities like UK Lawyers for Israel and others that are just trying to silence these voices. Every single one of you has a skill set and has an ability within your own sphere of influence, whether that's talking to people at your workplace, whether that's lobbying your employers, whether that's spreading social media posts. Every single one of you can make a difference, and it is a numbers game. There's a cognitive dissonance because we look at the UK government and we look at people, and people on the streets are out there in the hundreds of thousands every other week, and yet the government is not acting. And I don't know what will turn the lever. I don't know whether it's mass economic pressure, whether it's civil strikes. I don't really know, but we just have to keep going. And for the sake of those Palestinian health workers who are the actual heroes, who are steadfast, who sent me a message last week saying, essentially, the world has forgotten us, but we are human and we are still here. These were doctors in Nasser Hospital as the tanks were rolling around the medical complex. We are here, and we just want people to remember that we remain human and we love life like you. We have brothers and sisters. These are human beings. And sadly, we are living under a government that is 100% complicit. Keir Starmer, David Lammy, these people will be war criminals one day. And I hope, for one, that they'll be behind bars in The Hague.
And I hope that too, but unfortunately, Churchill is still considered as a hero. But next question.
This is just for Bassem.
No. I'm not part of this.
Oh.
The questions, please, for this.
Sorry. My question is number one: is there an active movement towards sanctions from the medical establishment and institutes towards the Israeli medical institutes and establishments, as we have seen that their medical institutes are complicit in this genocide, and also what has happened to the people of Arab countries? Why are they so silent? Even in the streets of coming out for demonstrating against, forget about the governments, we know they sold their souls many years ago. But what about the people? The Arabism, what happened?
Sorry to be blunt, but before you start going after the Arab people, look at your own government and look at the UK government. You look at the US government. I'm not saying it to you, I'm saying about our government here. The UK government, the US government, the Western world, that is, Egypt is not bombing Gazans. Saudi Arabia, for all the ills and evils, are not actively bombing people in Gaza and forcibly starving them and killing them. The problem here is Israel, that is aided and abetted by Western governments. And yes, we have many faults in the Middle East. We have many faults within our own dictatorships and despots. But the reality is, you look at the UK laws and regulations, and you know, they're even the censorship, the level of what's happening on the streets, the protest laws, the way they're taking away our freedoms is almost reminiscent of Egypt. This film, exactly. So you know, that's my answer to anyone who's kind of starts to kind of point the target. You know, the target needs to be very clearly to where the source of the problem is.
Yeah, because otherwise there is like a distraction. Because like honestly, the Arab world with all of their illness never claimed that they were free world. Never claimed that they were the Western free world that are like for us, we don't even know what human rights is. So for the people who claim that they are up there for human rights, they are the ones who are complicit. Because what do you expect from a dictatorship? Nothing. But if you're gonna pose yourself as a free world, maybe act as a free world, right? So that's why that is question you can say that. Question, please.
My first question wasn't answered.
Oh, what's the question?
Is there an active movement towards the institutes, the medical institutes in Israel, and the
It's not an active movement, but there are sort of smaller movements. So there's lots of associations that have asked Israeli membership to be removed for programs across the specialties, but there's not a group movement. It's very difficult to target Israel healthcare workers because you're assuming that they're all complicit with the Israeli government, and there are a number of them that aren't. And when you look at Ben's films and doctors that have spoken out about what's going on in those camps that are holding all of those doctors, most of the information has come from Israeli doctors that have stood up for this. So it is quite difficult to tarnish the entire Jewish healthcare population as being complicit. We do have to be very careful, but there have been many situations run by individual specialist organisations in the UK where Israel has been removed from programmes.
Good to see. This is. I'm sorry, like we have to stop. I stop everybody staying.
Okay.
But thank you so much.
Can
I say one more thing? Sorry.
I think let's have each one leave with one final word.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. One thing I was reminded, I was the one who actually asked for this. So there's a QR code up here, which you may have noticed, and that's not plugging. It's an important thing, obviously, for us. But this is the Health Workers Palestine Solidarity Fund. We raised almost 250k just on Saturday night. A voice of solidarity. So if we get to $1 million, this is co-designed by Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta, Dr. Ahmed Mukhalalati, Gazan medics and doctors on the ground. This is to help with retraining of specialists, to help with mobile clinics, and is being implemented by the Palestine Medical Relief Society and Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta's Children's Fund. So please donate generously, and this is to support and show solidarity for those heroes that Ben has platformed, that we've been watching exterminated and targeted day in, day out. These are the real heroes, supported by the other heroes like Victoria and Dr. Mo and others. So thank you.
Yeah. Yes, me.
Really all to say is that I think that the people in this room and the British public need to continue to push as hard as we can to say to those people who are governing in our name, that this is unacceptable. The recent polls, the polling that came out made it very, very clear that the majority of the British public are not in favour of the UK government's policy with respect to Israel, that more needs to be done. There needs to be an arms embargo, a complete arms embargo. We need to be looking at suspending trade, diplomatic, every relationship to ensure that we're putting every piece of leverage. And I would just say that each and every one of you continue. I know it feels hopeless. I feel hopeless, but we have to continue, because also this is not just about Gaza. I think it was 2 days before October the 7th that the UN came out and said more children had been killed in the West Bank than any other year that they had been reporting on it.
73, yeah, that time.
Exactly. So we need now to know that we have to keep pushing, because this is not just about Gaza. It is about Gaza, but it's about the Palestinian people more generally and their survival. So we will.
I think if you listen to BBC and you think they're not describing what you can see on your phone, there's something about Gaza which is extraordinary. You can see it on your phone and you can see it from space. You could see what's going on clearly, and the BBC almost daily fails to describe it, fails to show it deliberately, and treats every day as if it's on NBA. So they give false equivalents. Now I have to say that there are lots of people on the BBC doing very good reporting, and there are lots of people on the BBC who are being sat on by their bosses to not do very good reporting. And there is in this country, you are regulated by something called Ofcom. If you see something, because lots of people have signed petitions and said the coverage is terrible, it upsets me, all the rest of it, there are mechanisms to regulate your broadcasters, and Ofcom is something you can complain to, and you can say either that was not balanced or it was not accurate. And I think that is a complaint system that should really be used to any coverage, because the thing about this is the media has failed, as well as the governments have failed. And when the media does its job, the governments feared it. And I don't think, and I'll make some exceptions here, I'm very proud of the coverage that Channel 4 News has done, and ITV and Sky as well. But most of all, BBC is one of the most important institutions in this country, and is abjectly failed in the biggest crisis, the biggest killing of children in the 21st century.
I would disagree with the word failed. Failed means that you try to do the right thing and fail. I don't think they do try. I think they're actually deliberately being part of this. You don't say Israel failed, you say Israel is a criminal. And I think the BBC and the UK and the American government are all criminals and complicit in this. There's no failure. This is all by design.